That is young, isn't it, to get involved in this game?
Pues está pequeño, pero entre más pequeño más aprende y le gusta.
¿Cuáles son sus nombres?
Eric y Manuel.
Eric y Manuel, ¿de dónde son originarios?
De Reynosa, Tamaulipas.
¿Qué piensan hacer?
Vamos a hacer del Cartel del Golfo.
El Cartel del Golfo. ¿No quieres estudiar tú, joven?
No, eso ya es para niños chiquitos.
¿No te importa el estudio?
No, nada.
Do you worry that you might not make it home?
Es difícil, es una parte muy difícil porque está de por medio de mi vida.
There are two ways you can look at a cartel hitman. One, vile, brutal men who take pleasure in causing pain and suffering. Two, vulnerable teens manipulated into killing with the promise of power and money. Both are true. The reality of cartel hitmen is really sad. Kids as young as 10 are recruited from poverty-stricken backgrounds, promised the world, then made to kill and torture until they're desensitized to violence. A few years later, they end up recruiting people like them. It's a never-ending vicious cycle that causes chaos and destruction and only makes the ones at the top very rich. And the training for a Sicario is simply gut-wrenching. In this video, we'll explore the ins and outs of cartel hitman training, from recruitment to the worst crimes committed by Sicarios. Trigger warning. This video contains very graphic details of torture and murder.
I've done the simple stuff that everybody starts doing. Pulling teeth out, cutting fingers up slowly, or...
Yeah, that's the simple stuff cartels make you do for your initiation as a Sicario. For them, it's a relief. At least they didn't have to take a life. This ex-cartel hitman was just 13 when he was recruited by a cartel and forced to kill someone.
I was going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, I mean, got invited to Mexico. I didn't know what was going on at first. And I see about 6 people kneeling down. Then the individual, the person in charge, they start laughing. And I think they saw that scared, panicked look in my face and asked me if I had ever killed somebody.
When he said yeah, everybody started laughing again. They knew he was lying, and they knew he was going to have to kill that person right there and then. As soon as you step into a cartel, you're imbued with a sense of kill or be killed. Sometimes the Sicarios in charge literally tell you, either join us or get shot in the head. So your first murder becomes survival. You do what you have to just to stay alive.
He pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of her. And I just shot him. And he said he was putting me on his payroll.
When you join an army, you get trained to aim, shoot, defend yourself, and so on. When you join a cartel, you're just given a weapon and thrown into the real world. Many Sicarios end up dead or in prison within a few years. They're just scared teens with zero training and fear for their lives.
You don't practice with paper targets. It's a constant war zone. You practice with live targets. The people we were using as targets were rival cartel members. There used to be 50, 60, sometimes over 100 people, just like cattle for the slaughterhouse.
This is a real story. Sometimes cartels gather up dozens of rival cartel members and wait for the right moment to kill them all. They shove them into a house and invite them to play a game. If you've seen the Saw series, this is the kind of game I mean.
They tell him, look, man, if you can make it out of here alive, we'll give you your freedom.
These poor people run for their lives as the Sicarios shoot them down. Sometimes the rival cartel members get a hold of a weapon and a bloody war ensues. It's a true horror show. And this is the kind of training teens like this ex-hitman experience.
¿Cuáles son sus nombres?
Eric y Manuel.
Eric y Manuel, ¿de dónde son originarios?
De Reynosa, Tamaulipas.
¿Qué piensan hacer?
Vamos a hacer del Cartel del Golfo.
El Cartel del Golfo. ¿No quieres estudiar tú, joven?
No, eso ya es para niños chiquitos.
¿No te importa el estudio?
No, nada.
These two boys thought education was for little kids, but just how old were they? Cartels are really good at indoctrination. When you're not part of the cartel, you hear the same thing over and over again. That cartels are cool or badass. That joining the cartel makes you powerful, rich, and earns you the respect you want. You even see El Chapo hats for sale and hear narcocorridos playing over the radio. With a little luck, you may stumble upon a TikTok video from a Sicario bragging about the money he's made from the cartel.
Ven todo este dinero que tengo aquí. Yo no lo gané robando ni siendo narco. No, siendo narco sí.
It sounds like the best, if not the only, way to get rich fast and become popular. The problem is, propaganda never shows you the dark side. The constant propaganda, danger, extreme violence, trauma, PTSD, and moral degradation, those are all left out. And guess who's the most prone to falling for this kind of indoctrination? That's right, young kids from poor backgrounds. Some come from households destroyed by drugs or mental health issues. Others come from poor farmers' families that live hand to mouth and show no promise of changing for the better. This is the story of Pablo Escobar, El Chapo, and El Mencho. All of these ruthless, violent men started out as poor boys, desperate to make ends meet. Once they did, they learned they really liked power. Then they were willing to do anything to get to the top and maintain their position of power. That's the problem with cartel hitman training. You're enticed with the promises of money, power, protection, and respect, but you don't always get those. Instead, you get desensitized to extreme violence, and some sicarios start getting a real kick out of it. The best example here is Miguel Trevino Morales.
There was the summary beheading of 200 migrants, the casino fire which killed at least 50. The preferred method of killing involves beheading with chainsaws.
Miguel Morales was born on November 18, 1970, in Tamaulipas, into a family of 13 children. As one of the oldest brothers, Miguel took care of his family after his father abandoned them. Pressed for cash, he entered the criminal world as a young teen. During the 1990s, he worked for the Gulf cartel drug lord Hector Manuel Sayuse da Gamboa, aka El Cariz, who became his mentor. In the late 1990s, Los Zetas hired him for his skills in moving contraband across the border. He'd lived between Mexico and Texas all his life, and this was his specialty. By 2005, Miguel's job was fighting off insurgents from the Sinaloa cartel in the Nuevo Laredo area. But that's not all he did. Apparently, Miguel was good at grooming young teens into brutal assassins. He called them Zetitas, little Zetas, and had them kill rival sicarios, officials, and anyone who got in the Zetas' way. Some of his Zetitas were 12 years old. By 2010, when Los Zetas broke off from the Gulf cartel, Miguel already had ambitions to be their leader. According to some sources, he was fighting for the kingpin position as early as Alberto Lascano took over. Reportedly, he was actually ruling Los Zetas, commanding their horrific attacks while Alberto took care of more administrative matters. And when Alberto was gunned down by the Mexican military in October 2012, Miguel took over Los Zetas, and here are some of the things he did. In August 2010, Miguel had Los Zetas kill 72 undocumented immigrants on the mere suspicion that they might end up recruited by the Gulf cartel. The next year, he stopped a group of buses headed from Texas to Mexico. Over 200 people were kidnapped and taken to a ranch in San Fernando. There, Miguel and his Zeta sicarios violated dozens of women, forced men to watch, then forced the men to fight each other to the death. Whoever survived, he tortured to death and laughed as they screamed and cried. In August 2011, Miguel's men set fire to a whole casino in Monterrey after a casino failed to pay protection money. In 2014, Morales found out that 2 men from the city of Allende had reportedly stolen money from the cartel. So a huge Los Zetas army stormed Allende, but they weren't out for these 2 men. Los Zetas had decided to punish the whole town for it. Somewhere between 300 and 500 people died. Imagine having a kill count so big, you can't even estimate a real number. 80 homes were destroyed with heavy military machinery. Allende was reduced to ashes, and whoever managed to flee became a shadow of the person they once were.
Les digo a mis hijos, levántense, les digo, porque quién sabe qué está pasando en la calle. Digo, vístanse y nos salimos. Y todo empezó a tronar, ya no había luz, todo empezó a tronar, tanques, camionetas. Pero sí, ahí perdí a mis niños y a mi hija.
And it gets even worse.
They also prepare guisos. These are stews where you take a member of the family and you put them in a pig boiler and you pour gasoline on them and then you set a match to them.
Indeed, this was Miguel's preferred method. He would kidnap his victims, then boil them alive or slow burn them with diesel. Reportedly, when he was done with his enemies, he would kidnap their children too and subject them to the same treatment. Yes, he even boiled babies. And one of the worst rumors about Morales is he once put a baby in a microwave. Miguel Morales was thankfully arrested, but there are lots of sicarios like him. They start out as vulnerable teens, get desensitized to brutality very early on, then get an insatiable lust for power.
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cuántos años tienes? 14. ¿Dónde te detuvieron? ¿Dónde te agarraron?
Al aeropuerto.
¿A dónde ibas?
A San Diego,
¿Con quién ibas?
con mi hermano,
¿A los cuántos años empezaste aquí?
los 11.
This is Edgar, aka El Ponchis, aged 11. He started beating for a small South Pacific cartel drug lord known as El Negro.
¿Tú eres el que sales en el video golpeando a un que está colgado en una casa?
Sí,
¿Quién te daba órdenes de cortos de
negro,
El Negro had another special training technique for his young recruits.
¿Te drogabas?
me drogaba en negro
¿Te drogaba el negro? ¿Desde cuándo te drogaba el negro?
desde los 12.
Yep, he kept Edgar calm and detached as he ordered him to torture and kill.
¿Y el radilla qué es lo que te decía para convencerte de que mataras?
Más me drogaba. No sabía lo que hacía.
¿Te drogaba con qué? ¿Con marihuana o cocaína?
Edgar looks as innocent as they come, but all the bad things he committed changed him. At the time of his arrest, he was completely detached and confessed he wasn't afraid of the consequences.
¿Tienes miedo? ¿Tú tienes miedo? No. ¿No tienes miedo? ¿Sabes lo que va a pasar?
Sí.
¿Cuántos ejecutan?
4.
¿Cómo los ejecutan? ¿Cómo los ejecutan?
Sheesh. Many young sicarios like Edgar end up in prison or dead, killed by rival cartels or the police. Yet whenever they appear on camera, they seem at peace with their job.
Allá sembramos mota, sembramos sofia. Y otro negocio que no queremos que vea la gente ni el gobierno.
Do the police ever come by here? Yeah.
Así han llegado a venir, pero solo pasan por caminos y uno ya mismo, pues muchas veces le da dinero uno, 20,000, 50,000 pesos para que no te metas en 15 días.
As a sicario, you also have to deal with the police. The first option is always bribery. If the officers accept money, then the soldiers don't have to resort to violence. But sometimes, the police are really corrupt.
Otra vez quieren mujeres y eso.
So the police come here and you bribe them with women?
Es lo que piden y es lo que le damos. Si ellos vienen en buen plan, pues nosotros en buen plan, nosotros cooperamos con ellos. Y si ellos vienen en modo agresivo contra nosotros, pues nosotros nomás repelemos la agresión.
But what about the women's consent? And what happens if a woman doesn't agree to the horrible exchange? And just what does the cartel classify aggression as? After all, they deal with it every day. They must have a pretty high threshold for it. The answer is the exact opposite. Cartel soldiers have a low threshold. Anything can be understood as aggression, even an officer looking at them the wrong way. And this is because all they've known is extreme violence. Violence is their solution to anything. This is the real problem. A cartel hitman will eventually kill someone, probably in the first months working for the cartel.
Have you all, like, killed people with these guns?
Pues sí, pero si no conoce la gente, el problema es que mate por uno de compañeros, alguien conocido por familia. Pero yo supongo que si no lo conoce no siente nada.
Reminding Edgar's lack of fear or desensitized monsters like Miguel Morales.
It's like another human being. Does that ever, like, weigh on the conscience? You know, you think about it.
Pues no. No es difícil porque si no lo llevan a uno.
In a dog-eat-dog world, cartel soldiers learn they have to shoot first, and so the violence never stops. If you always think it's them or us, then you're prone to taking a life before yours is even in danger. In other words, sicarios are always afraid and paranoid that someone is trying to kill them. They're aware of the constant danger, and their only response is more violence, which only perpetuates the danger.
Yo creo que la violencia no se va a acabar. Porque tenemos que imponer el terreno a nosotros, pues.
The only hope to stop the dangerous game is people like this 13-year-old soldier.
Por las drogas no se van a pelear y no se van a matar.
If you get asked to carry on the family business, selling drugs, will you say no?
No, pues estudiar veterinario. Me gustan mucho los animales.
¿Qué es tu favorita animal?
Las vacas.
However, his family thinks he fits in perfectly with the cartel.
How old is the little dude over there? 13. That is young, isn't it, to get involved in this game?
Pues está pequeño, pero entre más pequeño más aprende y le gusta.
Sadly, most cartel soldiers never get the chance at another life. They get recruited from a very young age, forced to commit the unthinkable, then threatened when they want to quit or talk to the police. If they're ever caught snitching, they get killed on sight. Sometimes, soldiers are even killed in prison if the cartel finds out they've been talking to the police. And if by the time they're in their 20s, if they're still in the game, they're too far gone to realize what their job entails.
Do you consider yourselves kind of like terrorists?
No, nomás lo que hacemos, nada de otro tipo de acto contra la sociedad que esté mal.
A couple of days ago in Culiacan, a police officer was kidnapped. I suppose to me that seemed like acts of terrorism, you know, if you're kidnapping police.
Pues usted no sabe qué puede hacer el policía. Muchas veces es un policía corrupto que hacen cosas indebidas, pero alguna razón haber tenido para ese hecho, no, a nadie lo levantan nomás por puras ganas.
This just goes to show how deep cartel indoctrination goes. Most of these soldiers simply don't question their actions. Working for a cartel is illegal and morally wrong in every way imaginable. In short, you cause pain and suffering and make money for violent drug lords. The rewards? Some quick money at first. But don't imagine cartel soldiers make as much as El Chapo or El Mencho, and the risk far outweighs the rewards. The life of a cartel hitman is marked by constant danger and the ever-present risk of retaliation. Rival cartels, law enforcement agencies, and rival factions within their own cartel pose huge threats. Hitmen are always at risk of being hunted down by rival hitmen or targeted by law enforcement. This lifestyle can lead to a shortened life expectancy and a constant state of paranoia. There's also a great lack of personal freedom. Cartel hitmen are typically beholden to the cartel's leadership, following their orders without question, and have to move frequently, change identities, and remain in hiding to avoid detection. Also, deviating from the cartel's rules or attempting to leave the profession can result in severe consequences, like getting tortured, killed, or having your entire family subjected to the same gruesome treatment. The psychological toll on a cartel hitman is also huge. Engaging in acts of extreme violence and witnessing the consequences of their action can lead to trauma, desensitization, and moral degradation. Many hitmen suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, anxiety, depression, and substance abuse issues. Edgar did it against his will, but many seek to escape through alcohol and drugs. The cycle of violence never ends when you have numbed down sicarios who have lost their empathy and humanity. Training to be a sicario is a true horror show and a wake-up call from the fantasy that cartels are a cool, badass world. Once you're in, you can only get out in a body bag. Hey, thanks for watching. What do you think about cartel hitman training? Do you know of any other brutal stories? Let me know in a comment, and before you leave, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time, and stay safe.